The sound of Raul's slow breathing fills our room as I stare at the bright screen of his cell phone. It's 3 in the morning in our house in San Miguel de Tucumán, and the message I just read has shattered my world into 1,000 pieces. My mother-in-law Carmen's words shine maliciously on the screen. "Everything is ready, son. The lawyer says that once she is gone, the fortune will pass into your hands. We just need to be patient and careful." My hands shake as I hold the phone. The air conditioning hums softly, but I feel a cold coming from inside. I look at Raul, asleep next to me, his face relaxed and peaceful, as if he were not planning my death. How can he sleep so peacefully? 5 years of marriage, 5 years of what I thought was true love, reduced to a conspiracy to take my father's inheritance. I remember the day I met Raul in Parque 9 de Julio. He was selling crafts near the historic house, and I was out for a walk after a tense meeting with executives from the family business. He captivated me with his sincere smile and his stories about northern Argentina. He told me about his dreams of traveling through Latin America, his passion for photography, and his small studio in the Villa Luján neighborhood. All lies, now I know. The ceiling fan casts dancing shadows on the peach walls we chose together. Every corner of this house keeps memories that are now tinged with darkness. The photos of our wedding in the Cathedral of San Miguel, the memories of our trip to the ruins of Quilmes, the afternoons sharing mate in the garden while we planned our future. When did the farce begin? Was it from the beginning? Carefully, I get up from the king-size bed we bought just a few months ago. My bare feet make no sound on the wooden floor as I make my way to the bathroom. I need to think, I need to breathe. The mirror gives me the image of a woman I don't recognize, big, frightened eyes, pale skin, messy black hair falling over her shoulders. I am no longer the unsuspecting heir of Industrias Martinez, I am a prey, and my predator sleeps a few meters from me. I turn on the faucet and let the cold water run through my fingers. The sound of water helps me think. I can't confront them directly, it would be too dangerous. Carmen, my mother-in-law, is a calculating woman who moves in the most influential circles of Tucumán. I have seen her destroy reputations with a smile on her lips while serving homemade empanadas at her famous Sunday gatherings. I go back to the room and grab my own cell phone. With trembling fingers, I photograph each message of the conversation between Raul and his mother. I send them to a secret email account that I have maintained for years, a precaution my father taught me. In business and in life, darling, you always have to have a plan B, he used to tell me. How right you were, Dad. Dawn begins to peek through the windows as I finish copying all the evidence. The neighbors' roosters announce a new day in the Villa Alem neighborhood, but for me, it is the first day of the rest of my life. A plan begins to form in my mind as I watch Raul stir in the sheets. During breakfast, I act normally. I prepare the coffee the way he likes it, with a touch of cinnamon, and I serve the croissants that I bought yesterday at the bakery on the corner. Raul kisses me before leaving for his supposed photography studio, not knowing that I have already discovered that it is just a facade to meet with his mother's contacts. I love you, he tells me before leaving. The words that used to make me float now fall like stones in my stomach. Me too, I reply with a practiced smile. If you want to play this game of deception, I'm going to show you that you may have chosen the wrong victim. I spend the rest of the day moving like an automaton around the house, doing my usual routines. I call the office and say I'm not feeling well. My assistant, Maria Elena, wishes me to get well soon. If she knew. In the afternoon, Carmen calls. He wants us to go to his house in Yerba Buena on Sunday for a family barbecue. Her honeyed voice exudes venom. It's been so long since we all met, my love. I've been thinking about making those charca empanadas that you like so much. Of course, Carmen, I respond sweetly. Do you want me to carry something? No, you just bring that pretty smile you have. I hang up the phone and allow myself a moment of pure fury. The tears I've held back all day finally come out. I cry for the love I thought I had, for the family I thought I had found, for the betrayal that cuts like a knife. But I don't allow myself to wallow in self-pity for long. I am the daughter of Roberto Martinez, the man who built an empire from scratch. I'm not going to be a victim. I'm going to be your worst nightmare. As night falls over Tucumán, I begin to investigate. I use my contacts, I pull strings that neither Raul nor Carmen know exist. I discover that I am not the first. There were other women before, other similar plans that did not come to fruition. Carmen and Raul are experienced hunters, but this time, the prey is going to fight back. At my desk, by the window overlooking the garden, I write in my diary. Not my true thoughts, but the ones I want you to find when you think you have succeeded. Words from a confident and in-love woman, completely oblivious to the danger that stalks her. As I write, the plan takes shape in my mind. I'm going to give them exactly what they want, my death. But it will be on my terms, and when it's all over, they will learn that there are things worse than death. Like living in constant fear that someone knows your darkest secrets. The full moon illuminates the garden when I finally go to sleep. Raul is already in bed, pretending to sleep. I lie down next to him, aware of every inch that separates us. The very space we share is full of lies and betrayal. Tomorrow I will start moving the pieces of my plan. But for tonight, I allow myself one last moment of weakness. I close my eyes and remember when I believed in love, when I thought I had found my place in the world with this man. Silent tears wet my pillow as sleep finally overtakes me. The days following my discovery become a delicate dance of deception. Every morning I wake up in our house in San Miguel de Tucumán with a knot in my stomach, aware that I share the roof with someone who wishes me dead. However, I maintain my composure. Years running the family business have taught me to stay calm under pressure. My first step is to secure my fortune. I visit Santiago Morales, an old friend of my father and a trusted notary, in his office in the historic center. The colonial building, with its thick adobe walls and windows with wrought iron bars, reminds me of simpler times, when my father used to bring me here as a child. "Are you sure about this, Luciana?" Santiago asks me while reviewing the documents I have prepared. The ceiling fan barely moves the heavy air of the Tucumán siesta. "Completely," I respond, watching the dust particles dance in the beam of sunlight streaming through the window. I want everything to remain in trust under the control of the foundation. If something happens to me, not a peso will go to Raul. Santiago nods as he seals the documents. He doesn't ask any more questions, but I see the concern in his eyes. He has seen too many family dramas in his 40 years in the profession not to detect that something is wrong. Meanwhile, I begin to prepare my disappearance. I rent a house on the outskirts of Salta capital under the name Maria Jose Quiroga, an identity I created years ago as a precaution. The house is located in a quiet neighborhood, with views of the hills. It will be my refuge when everything explodes. At night, while Raul sleeps, I organize every detail. I transfer money to secret accounts, digitize important documents, pack a backpack with essentials. Everything should seem normal until the last moment. I continue attending company meetings, I have lunch with friends at the social club, I maintain my routines. Carmen intensifies her visits, always bringing something: empanadas from Salta, sweet cayote, fried cakes. Your generosity makes my stomach turn. Every Sunday we meet at her house in Yerba Buena, where I watch as she and Raul exchange knowing glances as they serve the barbecue. "You're thinner, my love," he tells me one day, pouring more locro onto my plate. "You have to take care of yourself, huh? We don't want you to get sick." Your concern sounds genuine, and that's what scares me the most. How many other daughters-in-law must have received the same treatment before they disappeared? The plan begins to take definitive shape when I find the perfect place for my accident, the route that connects Tucumán with Tafí del Valle. The winding road, with its sharp turns and cliffs, is infamous for its accidents. Especially in the rainy season, when fog reduces visibility to meters. I hire Miguel, a trusted mechanic recommended by Santiago, to prepare a car similar to mine. I make sure it has the same scratches on the paint, the same deterioration on the seats. I even add the same vanilla aromatic air that I have used for years. The car will be unrecognizable after the impact, Miguel assures me while he reviews the last details in his workshop in the South neighborhood. With the fire, it will be impossible to determine if anyone was inside. I pay him cash and memorize every detail of the plan. The chosen date is getting closer. It will be during the long weekend of July 9th, when Raul and Carmen plan a trip to Buenos Aires to close some deals. I know they are actually going to meet with the lawyer they mentioned in their messages. The days before our torture. Every time Raul kisses me, every time Carmen calls me to share a recipe, I feel my mask of normality crack a little more. But I stand firm. I have learned from the best. My father always said that in business, as in poker, success is keeping your poker face until the end. The night before my death, Raul is especially affectionate. Prepare homemade pasta, uncork a malbec that we saved for special occasions. As we eat dinner on the patio, under the lemon tree we planted together, I can almost pretend that nothing has changed, that we are still the happy couple everyone thinks we are. What a shame I have to travel tomorrow, he says as he picks up the plates. We could have taken advantage of the long weekend to go to Tafí. Don't worry, I reply with a smile that doesn't reach my eyes. There will be other opportunities. That night, as I watch him sleep for the last time, I feel a mix of sadness and determination. Tomorrow, Luciana Martinez will cease to exist, at least for a while. D-Day dawns cloudy, perfect for my plan. I say goodbye to Raul with a kiss that tastes like ashes. Be careful in Buenos Aires, I tell him. I love you. Me more, he replies, and for a moment I see a flash of something in his eyes. Blame? Remorse? It doesn't matter anymore. I wait until his flight takes off before launching the next phase. I drive to Miguel's shop, where we exchange the cars. My vehicle double is ready, with a full tank of fuel and a mannequin in the driver's seat, dressed in clothes identical to mine. The climb towards Tafí del Valle is lonely at this time. The fog creeps between the hills like a ghostly cloak, perfect for my purposes. At a specific point on the path, where the route makes a sharp curve over a ravine, Miguel activates the mechanism we have installed. The car, without a driver, plunges off the cliff. From my safe position, I watch as the vehicle crashes into rocks and explodes in a ball of fire. Black smoke rises into the gray sky, signaling the end of one life and the beginning of another. I don't stay to see the emergency services arrive. Miguel takes me to the bus terminal, where I take a bus to Salta under my new identity. During the trip, I see the first notifications on my backup phone, missed calls, worried messages. The news is spreading. My new house in Salta welcomes me with the silence of the unknown. The white walls and basic furniture have no history, they hold no memories. It is the blank canvas I need for this new phase of my life. That night, while local television reports on the tragic accident on the route to Tafí del Valle, I receive the call I was waiting for. It's Maria Elena, my assistant, crying inconsolably. I can't believe it, he sobs. The police say the car, they couldn't. I comfort her as best I can, hating to cause her this pain. Maria Elena has been more than an employee over the years, but I can't trust anyone yet. Not when the game is just beginning. From my window, I watch the lights of Salta flicker in the night. By now, Raul and Carmen must have already received the news. I imagine them in their hotel room in Buenos Aires, feigning pain while celebrating in private. They don't know that their victory is just the first act of my revenge. I spent the next few days monitoring the news and social media. My death is the topic of conversation throughout Tucumán. Local newspapers speculate about the causes of the accident, some suggesting problems with the brakes, others talking about weather conditions. Nobody suspects the truth. I see the photos of the funeral. Raúl, dressed in black, holding an apparently destroyed Carmen. My employees, my friends, all genuinely affected. It pains me to deceive you, but it is necessary. When the truth comes out, they will understand. In my new life as Maria Jose, I establish a simple routine. I go out rarely, always with dyed light brown hair and green contact lenses. I spend hours planning the next move, gathering more evidence, tracking Raúl and Carmen's movements through the private investigators I hired. I am not surprised to discover that just a week after my death, they are already making inquiries about my will. What they don't know is that the document they will find is not the one they expect. The fortune they coveted is out of reach, protected by a legal framework that not even the best lawyer can undo. The nights are the most difficult. In the solitude of my new house, memories assail me. Not only about Raúl and our life together, but about everything I left behind. My office overlooking the 9 de Julio Park, Friday lunches with my friends from university, the perfume of the orange trees in bloom in the patio at home. But every time nostalgia threatens to break me, I reread the messages between Raúl and Carmen. His cold, calculating words remind me why I'm doing this. It's not just for revenge. It is for justice, for all the other women who could have been his victims, for the memory of my father who trusted me to protect his legacy. Meanwhile, my researchers bring me more information. They discover shady connections, fraudulent businesses, a pattern of deception that spans years. Carmen is not only the manipulative mother she appears to be, he is the brain behind a network of scams that has left a trail of victims throughout northern Argentina. A month after my death, I watch from afar as Raúl and Carmen resume their lives. He has begun selling the studio's photography equipment, preparing for his next role. She has returned to her social gatherings, no doubt looking for the next victim. But his peace of mind is about to end. On my desk, I have prepared the first envelope you will receive. Inside, a photo of us from the wedding day, with a simple phrase written on the back: "Death is not the end. It's just the beginning of his nightmare." And I, from the shadows, will be the ghost that will not let them rest. The Salta winter brings with it a dry cold that reminds me that exactly 45 days have passed since my death. From my refuge on the outskirts of the city, I watch life continue its course while I plan each move of my revenge with the precision of a chess player. The first letter I sent had the desired effect. My informants tell me that Raúl spent 3 days without sleeping, jumping at every shadow, checking every corner of the house for signs of intruders. Carmen, always more pragmatic, tried to convince him that it was a joke in bad taste, but I could see on the security cameras that I installed how his hands were shaking as he checked the envelope. I decide to step up the game. I hire Pedro, a former company employee who now works as a private investigator, to start asking questions in Tucumán's social circles. He is a discreet man, with that common face that no one remembers, perfect for this job. Is it true that Mrs. Martinez had changed her will shortly before the accident? He asks at the meetings of the social club, where the ladies of Tucumán's high society get together to play basket and share gossip. Did anyone notice anything strange about Raúl's behavior in the weeks before the tragedy? He suggests during golf games at the Jockey Club, where local businessmen do their business between holes. Questions are like stones thrown into a pond, the ripples expand, reaching the right ears. Soon, rumors begin to circulate. People begin to remember details, the low-voiced discussions between Raúl and Carmen, the suspicious calls, the frequent visits to a lawyer in Buenos Aires. In the meantime, I send more messages. Each one is carefully designed to erode your security. One day it's a napkin from the cafe where Raúl proposed to me, with stains of red lipstick, my favorite color. Another day, it's a photo of Carmen leaving the lawyer's office in Buenos Aires, taken the day of my accident, with the phrase, "Lies have short legs," written on the back. The effects are evident. Raul begins to drink more than necessary. I see him stagger home in the early mornings, screaming at the shadows. Carmen tries to keep up appearances, but her visits to the psychiatrist become more frequent. The empire of lies they built begins to crack. One particularly cold afternoon, I decide to take the next step. I hire a young waitress from the bar that Raul frequents to deliver him a specific message. "Sir, a woman left this for you. She said it was important." The envelope contains a single photograph, Raul and Carmen in the lawyer's office, the day they planned my death. The image is taken from an impossible angle, as if someone had been floating in the air. It was actually captured by a hidden camera I installed weeks before, but the effect is as desired. Raul vomits in the bar's bathroom. When he arrives home, he finds Carmen waiting for him with disturbing news. The private detective has been asking more questions, this time about the exact circumstances of the accident. Why didn't they find traces of blood in the car? The detective had asked the firefighters who attended the incident. Is it normal for a body to completely disappear in an accident like this? The questions are seeds of doubt that I carefully planted. Each answer generates more questions, each question generates more suspicions. The circle slowly closes around them. One morning, I receive the news I was waiting for. Raul and Carmen have begun to openly argue. Neighbors hear screams, accusations, the sound of objects breaking against the walls. "This is all your fault," Raul shouts. "Your ideas, your plans." "Shut up, idiot," Carmen responds. "Do you want the whole neighborhood to know?" From my screen, I observe the scene through the cameras I installed in his house. Paranoia is consuming them. Every noise startles them, every shadow scares them. They have begun to distrust even each other. To increase the pressure, I send a special gift to Carmen's office, a box of chocolates, her favorite. Inside, next to the chocolates, is a note written in my handwriting. "Do you remember when you taught me how to make filled chocolates? Some recipes are to die for." Carmen panics. She has the chocolates analyzed, convinced that they are poisoned. They are not, of course, but the doubt is already planted. He stops eating in restaurants, starts preparing all his food at home, distrusting even his own cook. The game continues for weeks. Every day I bring a new ghost from his past, a new reminder of his betrayal. I send you fragments of conversations they had in private, details that only I could know. "Do you remember when we planned the accident in the kitchen?" says a note left on Carmen's refrigerator. "The mate was very hot that day. The password to the safe is still my birthday," is written on Raul's bathroom mirror one morning, in red lipstick. Paranoia leads them to take desperate measures. They hire private security, install more cameras, change the locks. They don't know that every new security measure is a new tool in my arsenal. Each hired guard is a new pair of eyes for my cause, each camera a new window into his descent into madness. One particularly dark night, I decide to take the game a step further. I make Pedro, my investigator, show up at the house with a folder full of evidence, photos of their secret meetings, recordings of their conversations, copies of compromising documents. "I'm investigating some irregularities in Mrs. Martinez's case," he says in a professional tone. "Some discrepancies have arisen." Raul pales. Carmen tries to maintain her composure, but her hands shake as she pours the coffee. The researcher leaves the folder on the table, like a bomb about to explode. "I'll leave this for you to review," he says before leaving. "I will return in a few days to discuss the details." That night, the argument between mother and son reaches new levels of violence. Through the cameras, I see how they accuse each other, how they reveal truths that they had kept hidden even from each other. "You got me into this," Raul shouts, tearing a photo of us off the wall. "I really loved her." "Don't be a hypocrite," Carmen responds, her voice laden with venom. "Well, you enjoyed her money, her contacts, her social position. Or have you already forgotten what you were like before you met her? A nobody selling crafts in the plaza." The truth rises to the surface like pus from an infected wound. Carmen confesses that this is not the first time they have tried this plan. There were other women before, other accidents, other assets that mysteriously vanished. Raul, broken by guilt and fear, begins to drink more than ever. I see him sitting in the patio at night, talking to himself, asking my ghost for forgiveness. In his moments of lucidity, he tries to investigate on his own, convinced that something doesn't add up to the story of my death. Carmen, meanwhile, begins to prepare her escape. I see her packing important documents, jewelry, cash. She is ready to abandon her son if things get bad. Their survival instinct is stronger than any family bond. The final blow comes in the form of a series of anonymous messages to different key people: the police chief, the judge who closed the case, the company's main partners. Each message contains a piece of the puzzle, a piece of truth that, when joined together, will reveal the full picture of your conspiracy. The tension in the house reaches unbearable levels. Raul no longer sleeps, spending sleepless nights, checking every corner, convinced that my ghost is watching him. Carmen begins to show signs of physical deterioration. She has lost weight, her perfect hair is now unkempt, her hands tremble constantly. One morning, Raul finds something that makes him completely lose control, a video recording on his computer, dated the day of my accident. In it, he sees himself and Carmen discussing the final details of the plan. She doesn't remember how the video got there, and Carmen swears she didn't put it up. Paranoia reaches its peak. Raul begins to suspect that Carmen plans to betray him, that perhaps she is behind all the messages and signals. Carmen, for her part, is convinced that her son is going crazy and that he could confess everything at any moment. The empire of lies they built collapses like a house of cards. Friends start avoiding them, business partners cancel contracts, invitations to social events stop coming. Isolation only increases his paranoia. From my refuge in Salta, I observe its fall with a mixture of satisfaction and sadness. It's not just revenge I seek, it is justice. Each day that passes, each new crack in its facade, brings us closer to the moment of truth. The next phase of the plan is ready. Soon, very soon, the ghost that haunts them will take physical form. And when that happens, they will discover that there are things much worse than death: how to live knowing that everything you built can crumble in an instant, that every person you trusted can be your enemy, that every shadow can hide the truth that you hold so dear. You tried to bury. Spring arrives in Salta with an explosion of colors and aromas, but my mind is focused on the final step of my plan. 3 months have passed since my death, and the time to close the trap has arrived. From my desk, I once again review the recordings I have accumulated during this time. Every incriminating conversation, every whispered confession, every malevolent plan discussed in the privacy of your home, it's all documented. This morning, as the sun begins to rise over the hills of Salta, I activate the last phase of my revenge. A manila envelope appears on the desk of Commissioner Rodriguez of the Tucumán Police. Inside, a USB stick contains the evidence I've been meticulously collecting: audio recordings, videos, scanned documents, suspicious bank transfers. "Good morning, Commissioner," says the note accompanying the evidence. "I suggest you review this carefully. Luciana Martinez's death was not an accident." Meanwhile, in Tucumán, Raul and Carmen face their own crisis. My latest moves have brought them to the brink of collapse. The night before, I sent them a message that shook their last defenses, copies of their most recent conversations, where they discuss what to do about the mounting pressure of the investigation. How can they have these recordings? Raul shouts, his voice cracking with panic. These conversations were yesterday. Carmen, sitting in her favorite chair, maintains a forced calm while lighting another cigarette. The ashtray next to him is full of cigarette butts, a silent witness to his growing anxiety. We have to go, he finally says, exhaling a cloud of smoke. Before it's too late. But it's too late. My contacts in the police inform me that Commissioner Rodriguez has reviewed the evidence and has ordered an immediate investigation. The evidence is devastating: recordings where they discuss the details of the plan, documents that show suspicious transfers, the testimony of the mechanic who prepared the car for the accident. The news explodes like a bomb in the local media. New evidence in the Martinez case, announce the headlines. They investigate. Possible homicide in tragic accident of a businesswoman from Tucumán. From my shelter, I watch as the world they built crumbles piece by piece. The news channels broadcast images of the police arriving at his house, of Carmen being escorted for interrogation, of Raul trying to escape from journalists who harass him with uncomfortable questions. Is it true that you and your mother planned your wife's death? The reporters shout. What does he have to say about the recordings? Others ask. The pressure is unbearable. Raul, broken by alcohol and guilt, makes the first fatal mistake: he tries to flee. I follow him through the security cameras of the bus terminal while he buys a ticket to Paraguay. It doesn't go far. The police, alerted by my informants, stop him before he can board the bus. Carmen, ever more astute, tries a different approach. He contacts his former friends in Tucumán high society, looking for help, protection, a way out. But the doors that once opened with a smile now close on his face. Nobody wants to be involved in a scandal of this magnitude. The evidence continues to accumulate. My investigators discover more victims of his previous scams. Women who lost fortunes under suspicious circumstances, all connected in some way to Raul and Carmen. Some begin to speak, encouraged by the media attention to the case. She also tried to introduce me to her son, declares a widow from Salta. But something about them didn't give me confidence. Carmen used to visit me after my husband died, says another. Always so kind, so concerned about my well-being, and my inheritance. The fence closes. The police raid his house and find compromising documents that they did not have time to destroy. In the safe they discover Carmen's diary, where she meticulously details each of her scams. My name is just the latest in a long list. Raul, facing the possibility of spending decades in prison, finally breaks. In a long interrogation, he confesses everything. He talks for hours, releasing the weight of years of deception and manipulation. My mother, she always found the perfect victims, he says among sobs. Women alone, with money, vulnerable. I was his secret weapon, the lovely son who conquered them. His confession is devastating. He describes how Carmen trained him from a young age for this role, how he taught him to be the perfect man for each victim. With me, the role was that of the sensitive artist, the free soul that needed to be anchored by a strong and successful woman. But with Luciana it was different, he insists, although nobody believes him. I really loved her. I didn't want to do it, but my mother, she has a way to convince you that there is no other way out. Carmen, confronted with her son's confession, finally shows her true face. In a start of fury, he reveals more than he intended during his own interrogation. Love? He mocks when they tell Raul's statement. That idiot never knew how to do his job well. He always gets involved too much, gets carried away by sentimentalisms. Love is for the weak. Business are businesses. His words, recorded by the cameras of the interrogation room, are the last piece that the prosecutor's office needs. The charges accumulate: attempted homicide, fraud, conspiracy, extortion. The empire of lies they built for years collapses in a matter of days. The media have a feast with history. The Black Widow of Tucumán, some newspapers title, referring to Carmen. The Seductive Sun, they write about Raúl. Television programs reconstruct every detail of the case, interview the previous victims, speculate on my whereabouts. Meanwhile, I observe everything from a distance. I see how the police discover the injured car, how forensic investigators determine that the accident was prepared. I see how the workshop where Miguel prepared the vehicle, although he is already far, well paid and with a new identity. The trap is complete, but it is not yet time to reveal my survival. I need to make sure that every detail is in place, that each charge is presented, that each test is documented. I don't want to leave any possibility that they escape justice. The days pass, and the news about the case does not decrease. The Tucumán society is shocked. Many knew Carmen, attended their famous meetings, shared their table. Now, each of them wonders how much they really knew, how many signs ignored. The employees of my company are interrogated. Maria Elena, my faithful assistant, provides valuable information about the changes that you noticed in my behavior in recent days before the accident. The gardener remembers suspicious conversations between Raúl and his mother in the patio. The cook mentions the times Carmen asked about my schedules, my routines. The case becomes a national phenomenon. Journalists from Buenos Aires arrive in Tucumán to cover history. Research programs reconstruct every detail, from our first meeting in the 9 de Julio park to the day of the accident. Experts analyze Carmen's psychological profile, trying to understand how a respected woman from the Tucumán society was able to orchestrate such a plan. Raúl is transferred to a federal prison. In your cell, write letters that you never send, all aimed at me. The guards who intercept them make them reach. I read their confessions, their regrets, their justifications. Each word is stained with the same manipulation that it used during our marriage. Carmen, meanwhile, maintains her challenging attitude. In the prison, he tries to manipulate guards and inmates, but his power has evaporated. It is no longer the lady of society that everyone feared and respected. She is just an older woman, facing the twilight of her life after bars. Research reveals more chilling details. They discover that Carmen maintained a detailed file of possible victims. Solo, successful, vulnerable women. My photo was in that file long before I met Raúl. Nothing in our meeting was casual. Every step of our relationship was carefully planned. The lawyers prepare the case for the trial. The evidence is overwhelming: recordings, documents, testimonies, Carmen's diary, Raúl's confession. There is no way to escape justice. But it is not yet the time for my return. I need to be sure that the case is solid, that there are no loose ends. From my window in Salta, I see the sunset painting the orange and pink hills. The trap is complete, justice is underway. Soon it will be time to return, to face those who tried to destroy me. But for now, I stay in the shadows, observing how his world falls apart, piece by piece, lie per lie. The day I choose to reveal my existence dawns with a soft drizzle about Tucumán. It's appropriate, I think, while I look in the mirror of the Central Hotel where I stay. My hair has returned to its natural color, black like the night, and I have abandoned the green contact lenses that I used for months. Luciana Martinez has returned from the dead. The Central Police Station of Tucumán is exactly as he remembered it, a building of the early 20th century with its cream walls blessed for time. The guard officer almost fainted when he sees me enter. His face pales as if he were really seeing a ghost. I am Luciana Martinez, I announce with a clear voice, enjoying the effect that my words cause. And I have crucial information about my supposed accident. Chaos unleashes immediately. Officers run from one place to another, telephones sound incessantly, Commissioner Rodriguez is called an emergency. They lead me to an interrogation room, but this time I am not the suspect, I am the final piece of the puzzle they have been putting together for weeks. I need you to tell me everything, says the commissioner, while his assistant prepares the recorder. From the beginning. During the following hours, he tells every detail of my discovery, my plan, my false death and my surveillance. The commissioner listens carefully, taking notes, nodding occasionally. His eyes are enlarged when I mention the recordings, the documents, the evidence that I have accumulated. Why didn't you come directly to us? He finally asks. Because I needed them to give away alone, I answer. He needed his guilt to consume them, to make mistakes, to reveal the whole truth. The news of my reappearance spreads as a fire in the small Tucumán community. The journalists gather in front of the police station, the news channels interrupt their regular programming. Tucumán businesswoman reappears after months of her supposed death, announce the headlines. But the moment I hope is the confrontation with Raúl and Carmen. The commissioner orders them to bring them from the federal prison where they are detained. He wants them to see me, to face the truth in person. Carmen arrives first. They make her enter the interrogation room where I wait for her. His face, normally impeccable, shows the ravages of the weeks in prison. His gray hair, formerly dyed, shows the whitish roots. But his eyes are still the same, cold, calculators, lethal. He stops dry when he sees me. For the first time in all the time I know her, Carmen loses control. His dignity mask is broken, revealing pure terror underneath. Impossible, he whispers, going back to collide with the wall. You are dead. Did they kill me? He complete his phrase with a smile. Sorry, Carmen. It seems that they are not so good in that as they believed. His legs fail and he has to sit down. The commissioner observes the scene from a corner, while two officers remain by the door. Carmen looks around like a cornered animal, looking for an exit that does not exist. All this time, mutter, connecting the points. The messages, the photos, the recordings, you were you. I learned from the best, I answer, leaning forward. You taught me well, mother-in-law. Especially to never trust anyone. Raúl is brought later. Your reaction is completely different. When he sees me, he falls on his knees, tears running down his demacrated face. Try to reach me, but the officers stop him. Lou, my love, babble. I knew you couldn't be dead. I knew. Don't call me like that, I short with coldness. Don't dare to pretend love now. The commissioner proceeds to interrogate them in my presence. It shows them the evidence that I have collected, the recordings, the documents. With each new evidence, their defenses collapse a little more. Carmen tries to maintain her original story, that everything is a misunderstanding, that the recordings are manipulated, that it is I who is conspiring against them. But his voice trembles, his arguments are weak. He no longer has the control that he treasured so much. Raúl, on the other hand, breaks completely. Confesses everything, every detail, every plan, every lie. He talks about how his mother trained him from a young age to be his accomplice, how together they scammed other women before me. But with you it was different, he insists, looking at me with pleading eyes. I really fell in love. That's why I couldn't. You couldn't what? I interrupt. Kill me. Is that what you mean? What should I be grateful because you fell in love and you couldn't kill me like others? His words die in his throat. Carmen looks at him with contempt. You were always weak, I told you 1,000 times. Feelings do not take place in business. The commissioner has seen enough. He orders them to return to their cells, but before, I have one last thing to tell them. Do you know what is most ironic? I say while the guards escort them. That if they had expected a little more, they could have had everything legally. It was to include them in my will, give them part of the company. I really thought we were a family. My words hit them stronger than any evidence. Seeing horror in their faces when they understand what they lost because of their ambition is the best revenge that could have planned. The following days are a whirlwind of statements, interviews, meetings with lawyers. My story captures a national attention. Television programs compete to get the exclusive, newspapers analyze every detail of the case. My employees organize a celebration when I return to the company. Maria Elena cries when she hugs me, asking me for forgiveness for not having noticed the signals. I reassured her, no one could have noticed it. Carmen and Raul were experts in deception. The investigation is expanded. Other victims begin to appear, women who were scammed by Carmen and Raul in other provinces. Some lost fortunes, others barely escaped on time. Each new story confirms the pattern: the manipulative mother, the seductive son, the carefully prepared trap. The trial becomes a media event. The prosecutor presents the evidence I collected: audio and video recordings, financial documents, testimonies. The defense tries to argue that I acted in bad faith, that I had a trap that induced them to confess. Then they admit that there is something to confess. Asks the prosecutor, and the argument falls apart. Carmen maintains her challenging attitude until the end. He refuses to show remorse, insists that everything was a misunderstanding. But the evidence is irrefutable. The jury does not take long to reach a verdict: guilty of all charges. Raul, meanwhile, accepts a deal with the prosecutor's office. In exchange for a reduced sentence, it provides information on other cases, other accomplices, other victims. His testimony helps dismantle a network of scammers that operated throughout the northern Argentine. The day of the sentence, the court is full. Carmen is sentenced to 15 years in prison for attempted homicide, fraud, and conspiracy. Raul receives 8 years for his cooperation. While the guards take them, Carmen looks at me one last time. In his eyes I see something that I never thought to see: fear. Journalists chase me when I leave the court. They want to know how I feel, what to do now, if I can ever forgive. My answers are measured, calculated. Justice has spoken, I say. Now it's time to rebuild and move on. But privately, the truth is more complex. The nights are difficult. Sometimes I wake up sweating, reliving the moment I discovered his betrayal. Other times I dream with Raul, with the happy moments we share, and I wonder if something of that was real. My therapist says that it is normal, that trauma does not disappear just because justice has been done. It reminds me that I survived, that I am stronger than I thought, that I have an entire life ahead. And he is right. Little by little, I start rebuilding my life. The company thrives under my renewed leadership. Implement more strict background verification policies, not only for employees but also for commercial partners. Experience has taught me to be more cautious, but it has not taken away the ability to trust. The media eventually lose interest. The history of the businesswoman who pretended her death to expose her murderers becomes one of the urban legends of Tucumán. Some say that I will write a book, others that my story will be taken to the cinema. But the true story, the few know, is simpler and more complex at the same time. It is the story of a woman who refused to be a victim, who used the deception of her enemies against her, who found strength in her pain and wisdom in her tragedy. While I observe the sunset from my office, I think of everything that has happened. In how life can change in an instant, in how the people we love most can be the ones who hurt us most. But I also think about the resistance of the human spirit, our ability to get up after each fall. 6 months have passed since the trial. Spring has reached Tucumán again, and with it, an air of renewal that is felt in every corner of my life. From my office on the last floor of the corporate building, I observe the city that I almost lost, that almost cost my life, but now represents my resurgence. The news that Raul has been transferred to a medium-security prison in Salta arrives as a distant echo of a life that no longer belongs to me. Carmen, on the other hand, fulfills her sentence in the federal criminal of Ezeiza, where they inform me, maintains her authoritarian attitude, although no one fears anymore. This morning, while checking the company's quarterly reports, Maria Elena enters with the local newspaper. In the social section, there is a note about the auction of Carmen's house in Yerba Buena. The photos show the garden where we used to share family roasts, the kitchen where she prepared her famous empanadas, the living room where she planned my death while smiling at me like a loving mother. "Do you want me to keep it?" asked Maria Elena, noticing my lost look in the images. "No," I answer, closing the newspaper. The past must stay in the past. The company has grown exponentially since my return. The unexpected advertising generated my case, although not sought, attracted the attention of international investors. Industrials Martinez has expanded to 5 more provinces, and we are in negotiations to open a branch in Chile. But professional success is only part of my recovery. The sessions with Dr. Mendez, my therapist, continue to be a fundamental part of my routine. In its office on San Martin Street, overlooking July 9th, I have learned to process trauma, to understand that the betrayal of Raul and Carmen does not define my ability to trust or love. Forgiveness, he told me in our last session, it's not something you owe to them. It's a gift you make yourself. His words resonate in my mind while I walk through the streets of the historic center. The city has changed, or perhaps it is I who sees everything with other eyes. Craft vendors in the square no longer remind me of Raul, they are just people working, living their lives. My new department in Barrio Norte is smaller than the house I shared with Raul, but every corner reflects who I am really. There are no photos of false weddings or manipulated memories. The walls are decorated with works by local artists that I have discovered in my weekend walks, each piece tells a story of authenticity and renewal. Raul's letters continue to arrive from prison. I no longer read them, my lawyer is responsible for archiving them as part of the legal registry. The last time they informed me about their content, I kept insisting that his love was real, that he was caught in his mother's plans, which deserves a second chance. "Real love does not plan your death," I said on the air an afternoon, while seeing burn the last letter I read. The ashes flew in the garden wind, taking with them the last vestiges of what I once thought it was true love. Research on other victims of Carmen and Raul continues. Every month a new story appears, another woman who was about to fall into her trap, another heritage that was almost looted. I have established a foundation to help these women, providing legal advice and psychological support. Transforming Pain into Purpose, titled a Gazette journalist into an article on the foundation. The name I chose for the organization, Phoenix, represents exactly that, rebirth of ashes, transform adversity into strength. The weekly meetings of the foundation have become a collective healing space. Women of all ages and social conditions share their survival stories, not only of romantic scams, but of all kinds of violence and manipulation. "Your story gave us courage," Susanna told me, one of the first beneficiaries of the foundation. "You showed us that we don't have to be victims, that we can fight, that we can win." The work with the foundation has brought a new dimension to my life. I am not only the successful businesswoman who exceeded an attempt to murder, I am a woman who uses her experience to help others to recognize the signals, to protect, to recover her power. The media occasionally try to revive the story. Every time there is an update on the case of Carmen and Raul, journalists reappear at the door of my office. I have learned to handle these situations with dignity and firmness. My story was already told, I tell you. Now I am more interested in talking about how we can prevent other people from going through the same. The nights are no longer as solitary as before. I have formed a nearby group of true friends, people who were by my side during the darkest moments and who celebrate each little victory with me. We have dinner together on Fridays, we share genuine laughs, we build real memories. The question about romantic love arises occasionally. My friends try to introduce me people, organize group outings, encourage me to give another chance. But I'm not in a hurry. I have learned to be comfortable with my loneliness, to value my independence, not to confuse the company with happiness. Love will come when I have to arrive, I tell my mother during our Sunday lunches. For now, I am focused on loving myself. The company has become a corporate social responsibility model. We implement training programs for women in vulnerability, we offer internships to students from disadvantaged communities, we support local development projects. Your father would be proud, Santiago, the old friend and notary, told me during the inauguration of our last floor. You not only saved the company, you transformed it into something better. Nightmares have decreased over time. I no longer wake up sweating in the middle of the night, reliving the moment I discovered betrayal. The ghosts of the past have faded, replaced by dreams of the future, of possibilities, of hope. The case has laid an important legal precedent. The judges now pay more attention to the patterns of manipulation and romantic scam, the sentences are more severe, the most thorough investigations. My story has helped change the way the judicial system addresses these crimes. Your courage changed the rules of the game, the prosecutor told me in our last meeting. Now these criminals will think twice before trying something similar. Life continues its course in Tucumán. The stations change, the jacarandas bloom and wilt, people go and go through the streets of the center. I am one more among them, but I carry with me a story that has transformed me, that has taught me invaluable lessons about strength, survival and redemption. Every morning, when I open the curtains of my office and I see the sun illuminate the Tucumán hills, I remember the long road I have traveled. From that night when I discovered the truth on Raul's cell phone, until today, when I can say with certainty that I not only survived, but I triumphed. Revenge no longer occupies my thoughts. Justice has been fulfilled, and with it a peace has arrived that I did not expect to find. Carmen and Raul will pay for their crimes, but their punishment is no longer my concern. My energy is focused on building, creating, transforming. The best revenge is to live well, says an old saying. Now I completely understand its meaning. Each achievement of the company, every woman we help through the foundation, every moment of genuine joy is a victory over those who tried to destroy me. The sun begins to get on Tucumán, painting the sky of oranges and violets. From my window, I see the city that saw me fall and get up. The city that witnessed my feigned death and my real rebirth. The city that, despite everything, I still call home. Tomorrow will be another day of work, of meetings, of important decisions. But it will also be another day of life, freedom, authenticity. One more day in which I choose to be the protagonist of my own story, not a victim of history that others wanted to write for me. And while I close my office and prepare to return home, I smile. Not only did I survive, I won. And in that victory, I found something more valuable than revenge. I found my true power, my true voice, my true self.